The sun revealed bright dawn over the plains of Plataea, a warm golden light that shone up in the glorious Achaemenid army. This army, known as the Immortals, was a name that instilled both fear and respect in the hearts of its enemies. 10,000 brave men, dressed in magnificent attire and gleaming armor, stood in precise order like an unbreakable wall. Each of these men was a part of a larger whole, like an orchestra that performs a flawless symphony with perfect harmony and discipline. Among them was Arash, one of these warriors. He was a young man from the land of Pars, who had joined this army to defend his country and preserve the glory and greatness of the Shahanshah. Arash had always looked up into Immortals with pride, an army that always stood at the heart of the battle and never knew defeat. When Arash first donned the attire and armor of the Immortals, he felt as if he had become part of a glorious and proud history, the history of the Achaemenids, who ruled over many lands and had gifted the world with a great culture and civilization. On that day, on the plains of Plataea, Arash stood ready alongside the other Immortals to face the Greek enemies. The Greeks were a tenacious and proud people who never submitted to another's rule. They had shown much resistance in previous battles, but today was different. Today the Immortals stood against them, an army unlike any other. Arash looked out at the horizon. A long line of Greek soldiers stood with their shields and spears. He could hear the pounding of his heart in his ears, but there was no fear in his heart. He trusted in the training he had received, in his commanders, and in his comrades. The great commander of the army, known as Hermes, was mounted on a powerful horse, his piercing gaze fixed on the battlefield. Hermes was a man of great stature and sharp eyes. He had served the Shahanshah for many years and he had participated in numerous battles. He knew that today he must once again showcase the honor and glory of the Achaemenid Empire. In his mind, he reviewed the battle plan, the precise movements of the army, the division of the forces, and the correct use of the terrain. He knew well that every decision he made could determine the outcome of the battle. As the sun climbed higher, the long shadows of the Immortals grew shorter, and the sounds of battle preparations reached their peak. The neighing of horses, the creaking of armor, and the heavy breaths of the soldiers blended together. With a loud shout, Hermes gave the command to advance. His voice thundered across the field, and the Immortals moved towards the enemy with astonishing discipline. Every step they took was like a powerful strike up in the earth, as if the ground itself trembled from their power and majesty. Arash marched in the heart of this immense and orderly calm. At every step he took, his breath grew heavier, but he reassured himself that today was the day the Immortals would once again etch their name in history. As he moved forward, his mind drifted back to the days of training, days spent practicing under the hot sun, fighting with swords and spears, and learning endurance and discipline. All of this training was for such a day when they were to showcase their skill and strength. The Greeks were also preparing themselves. They were aware of the power of the Immortals and knew that facing such a force would not be easy. Their commander, Pausanias, was a clever and experienced man. Like Hermes, he was thinking of the battle plan, the tactics he needed to employ to stand against this formidable force. The battle began with the first blows and clashes. The Immortals, with their long spears and sharp swords, descended upon their enemies like a powerful wave. Arash wielded his sword with all his might. Every strike was precise and deadly. The sound of swords and spears clashing with shields and armor, the cries of the warriors, and the neighing of horses, all intertwined, creating a symphony of death and bloodshed. Arash, in the midst of this chaos, felt like a legendary hero. He knew that in such moments every move could change the fate of the battle. Hermes was overseeing the battlefield. He saw how the Immortals were advancing into the heart of the enemy and breaking the Greek defensive lines, but he also knew that they must not underestimate the enemy. Pausanias was not a man to easily accept defeat. He had organized his forces well and was implementing tactics to try and halt the Achaemenid army. In the midst of the battle, one of the Greek flanks launched a surprise attack, attempting to outflank the right wing of the Immortals. This move was quickly detected by Hormuzd. He immediately ordered a section of his forces to detach and counter this attack. Arash, along with a group of Immortals, moved to the right flank. Each of them knew that if this attack succeeded, the entire battle might be jeopardized. Arash, amidst the battle's uproar, had complete trust in his commander. He remembered Hormuz's words. A battle is not just a fight of swords, it is a battle of minds and hearts. You must always adhere to strategy and discipline. With this thought in mind, Arash and his comrades rushed to the right flank and launched a fresh assault on the Greeks. This attack was so strong and coordinated that the enemies quickly retreated. Arash felt that this was the moment of victory. With the defeat of this surprise attack, the Greek forces were severely weakened. Pausanias, astonished by the power and discipline of the Immortals, knew that he had to make a decisive choice. He looked at his commanders, at his weary soldiers who were still fighting, and at the Achaemenid army that advanced like an unstoppable flood. He decided that rather than risking further losses, it was time to retreat. Although this decision meant admitting defeat, it was the only way to preserve the lives of those who remained. As the Greeks retreated, the battlefield was completely under the control of the Immortals. The sound of Achaemenid trumpets signaling victory echoed across the plains of Plataea. The Immortals, exhausted but proud, looked at each other, reflecting on how they had once again upheld their name and honor. Arash, still flushed with the heat of battle, looked around him. He saw his friends, who had fought alongside him among the enemies, and now, with tired faces, but smiles on their lips, they thought of this victory. He remembered his father's words, "The battle is where real men are made," and today Arash felt that he had truly become a man. Hormuzd, sitting atop his horse and surveying the battlefield, was pleased with this victory. He knew that this battle was just a part of a larger war, but victory in this battle could have a significant impact on the overall outcome. He looked at his soldiers, at Arash, and the other young men who had fought in this field. He was proud of them. He knew that each of these soldiers would become a part of history, a history written with blood and bravery. With the battle over, the Immortals returned to their camp. They were tired, but full of pride and honor. Arash, sitting on the warm soil of the plains of Plataea, looked up at the sky. He knew that today was a day he would never forget. He thought about how this victory would become a part of history, and how his name and those of his comrades would be mentioned alongside the great names of Achaemenid history. As night fell, the soldiers gathered around the campfires. They spoke of the memories of battle, of the moments when they had seen death in the eyes of their enemies, and of the courage they had felt in their hearts. Hormuzd walked among them, listening to their stories and smiling at them. He knew that these were moments the soldiers would always remember. Arash, listening to the crackling of the fire and looking at the faces of his friends, felt that he had truly understood the meaning of being an immortal. He realized that being an immortal was not just about physical strength and fighting in battles. Being an immortal meant having a heart that beats for one's land, a mind committed to its purpose, and a spirit that always seeks honor and glory. He knew that today he and his comrades had become immortals, not just because they had won on the battlefield, but because their spirit had remained alive in this victory. The night passed quietly, and at dawn the next day, the Immortal army prepared to march towards a new battlefield. As Arash donned his armor, he thought to himself that this was just the beginning. He knew that many more battles lay ahead, and that he and his friends would have to demonstrate their strength and endurance time and time again. But now he was ready for any challenge that lay ahead. He knew that the Immortals never fail, because they fought not only with swords and spears, but with their hearts and minds. Once again, the Immortal army set out, with the discipline and grandeur that always accompanied them. Every step they took seemed to rewrite history, a history written with blood, sweat, and tears. Arash was among them, his head held high and his heart full of faith. He knew that every step he took was a step towards immortality. He and his comrades were immortals, not just in name, but in their hearts and souls, and that was what set the immortals apart from others.